Alrighty, hi everybody. Everyone should be on and unmuted and ready to go. Welcome to Monday Night Domains. Super excited to have our lovely guest here. We're going to talk some Web3 gaming. Do you want to go ahead and give a little introduction?
Oh, sure. Yeah, very excited to be here, y'all. So great to meet you, Paige. So great to meet you, Julie. I'm John Wollheim. I work with freename.io, which is where you can go right now to get your very favorite Web3 domains. We focus on our .gaming domain product, which we're seeing being adopted across Web3 games, which is, of course, what we're going to talk about today. I'm a speaker who specializes in AI adoption, enthusiasm, and advocacy, as well as ethical implementation of AI that creates equity as opposed to destroying it. I'm a new dad and an unapologetic nerd, and that's it. I think that's enough, right?
That was amazing. That was round of applause. That was good. So
wow, we could all learn a little something for having a great 1 minute pitch that ends with a period that has its highs and lows. John, I've learned a lot from you seeing you speak with Davide about gaming and Freename, watching the stuff you're doing in AI. You know, I could really tell also, we'll talk about this later, that you really have a heart for the gaming community, you know, and I know there's a lot of turmoil, you know, going on there. And as a non-gamer, you know, I can live vicariously through you, but a lot to talk about tonight. My name is Paige Howe. Monday Night Domains was always my dream of having a show. It started with my online conference. We did a talk, Monday Night Domains, on Clubhouse for 2.5 years. And then we're bringing it back through the sponsorship of Freename to be able to talk about domain names, talk about the power of domain names and digital identities, and also be kind of a US-centric nighttime in the USA when a lot of people are doing their side hustles, they're doing their playing, they're doing their digital investing. And as much as Freename is a European-centric company, it gives a way to talk about it, you know, a nighttime here in the US. And I think that was one of the goals, too, is to be able to have something accessible for people live on Monday Night Domains. Julie?
Hi, I'm Julie. I am actually Paige's daughter. So that's my introduction to domains. So I've been listening to my dad talk about domains for my entire life because he is one of the biggest advocates out there for them. So I recently got into the field whenever my dad asked me to help him out with TLD.CFD, which is clothing and fashion and design, which is not necessarily my dad's forte. So he got me on, and now I'm addicted. So here we are. We are able to we've been doing Monday Night Domains with Freename for a few months now, and it has been so fun to get to talk about domains and kind of, I think we really try and talk to all experience levels in domains and Web3, and it's been really fun because I've learned so much just from the questions that get asked and having to, you know, and talking about it all with my dad, and this has been a great time. And now we're going to get to learn about gaming, which is something I totally need to like more. Like I don't understand why I haven't adopted the gaming lifestyle yet, because it's definitely, I'm a competitive person. But so we got a lot to talk about tonight, which is super exciting.
Woot woot.
That was a little bit longer than a 1 minute pitch.
John, what's going on in gaming these days? We'll hit it with the highlights. What's going on in gaming?
Oh, well, let's hit some highs and let's address some lows.
Yeah.
So gaming as an industry, and sometimes it's, I think, helpful to frame it a little bit, because gaming can mean a lot to a lot of different people, and it can really vary. Some people hear gaming, they think sports betting. They hear gaming, they think casino, and a lot of other sort of forms of games. We're going to frame the word gaming as video games, tabletop games, and any other form of play that is not gambling. So that this excludes any of the statistics we talk about, any of the trends. This is completely agnostic to anything that may or may not be happening in the casino industry, right? Even though Vegas is a real beating hub, a real beating heart hub of games in the video game sense. Yeah, we're not talking about gambling, but so in the gaming world, video games, tabletop, and play, there is just this ongoing growth that has been consistent, but really exploded during COVID, where what we found was when everybody had displacement from their roles, they had huge amounts of available time to play. And in many cases, not only were they looking for something to do to have fun, they were looking for a way to replace social connectivity that honestly was a source of mental health. And so now we've seen a complete sea change in the way that huge populations think about and interact with the concept of games. And that has been incredible to watch, especially as a lifelong gamer myself. For some 500,000 years, I've been gaming since the Jurassic period. I've fossilized Nintendo controllers that can be found in deserts in Utah. But I love this stuff. And so it's so cool to see games move from your mom's basement, like it was when I was a kid, to now being so front of mind that some of the most prominent social movements like sketch. Hey, brother.
What's up, brother? That one.
Special teams, special plays, special players. That, I mean, look at that. This is so front of mind for so many people that it's mainstream, and it's important in a way that isn't just, again, your mom's basement. Web3 games is a huge part of this. Web3 games is growing quietly. It's this juggernaut that's happening in the back right now that's just growing and growing. If you go to GDC, if you go to Gamescom, any of these big conventions, more now than ever, you see these huge groups of Web3 development teams, actual blockchains like Avalanche coming along. And it's just really cool to see. I'll pause there because there's so much more to talk about. But there's a couple of the really cool things that are happening in games. If we had another 3 hours, I would love to continue down a never-ending list.
Well,
No,
it's great
awesome
stuff. And it really hints at, like you say, whether you call them memes or movements or mind share. And it's coming from not from Google, not from the old internet. It's coming from its own place organically with its own ecosystem. And I guess that's what I've appreciated about what gaming, and I'll use your definition of gaming, has done is it's been a new power source, different from what I've experienced in the internet where it was hosting and Microsoft and Netscape, you know what I mean? And really, for me, like Twitch.tv was a great example where someone took a domain name, built their own platform, paid $30 a year for that domain name and built their own platform that they owned. And I know that gaming, John, for me as an older person, it was always about consoles. Well, you got this console, this console, this console. But when it met the internet, you really had kind of a decentralization. Is that a good way to say it? Where the internet empowered individuals like Twitch to grow and be a player.
Yeah.
Decentralization, democratization. Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah. I agree. I think I really like your definition of gaming because definitely whenever I hear gaming. I'm sorry.
Keep going.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I think I have a little bit of a lag on my side, so I thought I was interrupting. But I like your definition of gaming is bringing it back to like real world physical games. I definitely consider gaming to be like I hear gaming. Okay, console. We're talking. What's the soccer car game? That.
Rocket League. Rocket League.
Yeah. Like that's my first come to mind. We're talking gaming. So I can change my answer. I am an avid card player. Like, avid. My dad can attest. So, yes. There's my change in answer from earlier. Now I can consider myself a gamer.
See, so what's so interesting, Julie, is this is a really common experience where when we start talking about games, we do have a knee-jerk reaction because there's some social stigma attached. So when I immediately ask somebody, especially if you really hit it hard and you go, hey, are you a gamer?
Yeah.
Most people will say no. I might even say no because I'm immediately going to go to an association of like playing all day long and this being my, reason why I maybe have some social challenges, which was certainly true of me as a young person. Like gaming has not always been an inherently perfectly positive presence in my life, and it does have an addiction component. And there's pieces of games that I feel like if we don't at least address that and say this exists, somebody will have a very credible way of saying, well, all you're talking about is the good, and you're not willing to acknowledge the darker side. But like anything, there's too much of a good thing, right? 100%. Acknowledging that, so many people will say, oh, I'm not a gamer, or I don't really play games. But actually, wait, I do play a game on my phone. And I play it for like an hour a day. Well, guess what?
You're a gamer.
You're a gamer. Right? Yeah. No, I only play Candy Crush. I only play Candy Crush. Well, guess what? Yeah, you're part of one of the top 10 biggest games in the world, right? So
It's been fun for me because I've played fantasy football since it started. I think I got chops in fantasy football back to like 87. You know what I mean?
And you lost to me last year.
But I did. But it's also been a way to communicate with my brothers and my family and my friends. You know what I mean? So it's a way. And I see Julie and my wife where every morning they share their little Wordle with each one of them. You know what I mean? And how they get it in 2, how Penny gets it in 2, I will never understand. Of all the words in the English language, you get it in 2. But like you say, John, well, I don't do gaming. And then all of a sudden, Wordle's a part of your life every day.
Must be genetic brilliance on Julie's part.
Hey, thanks. I do not. I got
John, when I hear about gaming, I heard the word from Bob Iger last week when he was interviewed about he had one of his guys come to him and they're investing this $1.5 billion in Epic Games. And he said the word that I heard you use when we talked about the show tonight, which was screen time. And this concept of screen time being maybe even more than movies and TV now. And I think you had commented a couple times on even some numbers and statistics, and that really seemed to turn his attention too. Screen time.
Yeah. So what's interesting is if you look at what a game is and you look at how it's made, for the most part, I would say this is probably true of the vast majority of games, maybe not all of them, but most games are made by a group of passionate people who really enjoy the concept that they're working with. And so this could be a first-person shooter like Counter-Strike. This could be a third-person sort of survival battleground game like PUBG or Fortnite. Of course, most people know Fortnite. It could be a open-world creative game like Minecraft or Roblox. The Roblox now, there's Julie's game. Roblox is anything, right? It's not even a game anymore. It's a platform, which is its own whole other thing. But anyway, it's made by a group of people who really love what they do and they want to have fun when they play it. Just like when you make a movie, you want people to love watching your movie. But you might not be thinking about how many times can I get somebody to watch this movie? You're probably thinking, I want them to have a great experience. And maybe they'll watch it again and they'll buy a Blu-ray or whatever, buy it on Apple TV instead of just watching it on a streaming platform as a rental or a stream only. But with games, your whole idea, your whole motivation is not just getting somebody to buy the game anymore. Now, because of microtransactions, which I'm not going to necessarily say are inherently good or inherently bad. They're just a thing. And they're a huge thing driving hundreds of billions of dollars of movement around the world in all sorts of different industries. For games, probably 20 or $30 billion a year moving transactions.
Billion.
Billions with a B.
Can you elaborate a little bit on what you mean by microtransactions? Just fast.
So there are very few games that you would pay for anymore. Other than unless you go on Steam or in some environments where you're going to pay for like a version of the game up front. Most games now, like Fortnite, like PUBG, like many of these games that you would think of when you first start thinking about a game, Rocket League, you're going to be able to download and play this game for free, which is wonderful. And you're probably going to have the exact same experience that somebody who plays this game a lot has had. I mean, they're going to wreck you, but you're going to have the same experience from a control and standpoint. But the more you play, the more you want to have a differentiated experience. And so microtransactions come in a couple of ways. The models that we really hear a lot about are free to play or freemium. Freemium means it's free, but you have an upgraded experience when you pay money. And that usually means cosmetics. So in Fortnite, that would be skins. Just because you can pay as much money as you want in Fortnite, you're not going to necessarily have a better character. Maybe like a 1% advantage because your character is like you're dressed as like Batman and it's like a dark map or something like that, like slight difference. But you're not like, you don't have twice the hit points or a gun that blows up half the map or some crazy thing. Right. So microtransactions are things that you find in gachas. Gacha is a very, very popular form of transaction that you'll see, especially in the eastern part of the world, where you want a skin, you want a vehicle, you want a thing, but you have to buy chances to get it. And it's very smart because it does engage that sort. Here's where gambling does start to overlap, and why some countries have started to ban this for kids. But before I ramble any further, microtransactions are like between $1 and in some cases $100 at a time that you can spend to get a differentiated experience, whether cosmetic or an actual advantage.
Okay, so it's like when I buy more lives, essentially.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, makes sense. Thank you.
And right now, John, that's a centralized type experience. The game maker needs to have a way for you to pay, a way for you to pay fast enough. They collect the money. You have to have a payment method. This is when we kind of start leaning toward Web3 and stuff. But right now, originally that was really centralized. And has that changed at all with wallets and crypto and stuff like that?
Well, it is changing rapidly. And that is part of why there is there's some like any major change that's a significant disruption. The incumbents in the industry, for very good reasons, they want to mitigate how fast that change happens so that they can control it and be part of it to the best of their ability. Inherently, it's a monopoly and they want to keep it that way in some cases. And Web3 is very difficult to monopolize, especially in any environment, but certainly in games. Now, in my experience, in my one person's opinion, I'm not going to reference like, oh, here's what all these CEOs said that they're doing. But I believe that large game companies are moving toward more Web3-esque environments ahead of actually adopting their own blockchains or one sort of universal blockchain. And you're seeing more and more cross-play, which means that you, Paige, are on an Xbox, you, Julie, are on a PlayStation, I'm on my iPhone, and my brother's on his Android phone. And we're all able to play the same game together. That's cross-play. That is something that used to be completely forbidden. And there was a ton of competition and nobody wanted that. And now the players realize, especially post-COVID week, we want to play with each other. And I want to be able to play with my friend who happens to have an Android phone and I have an Apple phone, right? So that is really sort of melting a lot of this resistance that has historically kept change like Web3 from coming along. So you'll see a game like, take Blizzard's World of Warcraft, right? There's a joke. Anybody who's listening to this who's played World of Warcraft for any amount of time, there's this joke called /played. You never, ever, ever ask somebody their /played because it will say on the screen exactly in very specific terms, down to the second, how much you've played, how much screen time you've spent on that game. And in some cases, you hit /played and you will see years. There are many, many people who have spent a year or more of their life on that game. And it's very easy to do. And that, I mentioned that, Paige, because it goes back to your question of screen time, where I've never seen a single movie that I could say I've watched so many times that if I asked myself, how much time have I spent watching this movie, even a genre of movies, that I've spent a year of my life. And I'm not going to say what my /played is, but it could be like that.
Now, Julie, let me ask you a question. As a girl,
Yes.
have you found video gaming to be attractive in general? Or would you have a /played for other things like fashion and cosmetics and skincare and stuff like that, that's maybe not in video games, but if you had a /played for that, it would be pretty long?
No one is allowed to know my /played time on Amazon or Kindle. Ever. Because I have spent, and honestly, TikTok too. So
yeah,
that one, that would get me really. However, I wish I would have known that because I actually used to play World of Warcraft just for like a month. I was into it because I had an ex-boyfriend that really liked it. So I wish I would have known that because I definitely would have loved to cause chaos and ask people their /played time, even though I'm not supposed to.
Well, I hope no one asked my /played for domaining.
I was going to say, Dad, what's your screen time for Domain Cost Club?
Well, John, that's terrific. John, how did you find so domains? I saw you on a show and I actually registered. Old is gold. That's one of my good phrases since you have to go to your strength. So old is gold. And I got oldisgold.gaming so I could be a member of whatever happens, with .gaming. But when you started talking about cross-play, it reminded me of cross-chain. You know what I mean? Cross-environment. Cross DNS, maybe, if that's going to be a thing. And really, it's weird because having a sponsor helps something grow. right? But then you want it to be decentralized later. So it is hard to grow decentralized, you know what I mean? But once everyone's in, it seems like it's, it's easier. But as you look at domains, what do you think the role maybe of a Web3 domain system could be in gaming, or in those experience, those really, maybe playing is just a better word than gaming, just playing?
So I believe that we learn through play, or the most effective way that we learn is through play. Because when our amygdalas identify that we're safe, and our prefrontal cortex identifies that we're engaging socially, or that we're using our higher level logic, we are going to remember experiences more clearly. And now if you add to that emotional experiences like fear, joy, love, lust, hate, frustration, I think I've experienced all of those in the span of about 30 seconds with some games. And I remember those pretty clearly because of that. Because by the time all that information makes its way into my little hippocampus, it is now hard coded in, because my brain has said, from an evolutionary level, that meant something to you. You experienced danger there, and now you need to remember that. You died a lot, and you got real mad because you got owned by probably some 12-year-old on the East Coast, because I'm terrible at games now because I'm 1,000 years old. Well, now I remember that, and I'm probably going to develop and learn more quickly. And that applies to so many different forms of learning. Duolingo, the most gamified learning I can possibly imagine. It is a video game. You're playing a video game, and your controller is largely your voice and your keyboard. You get levels, you get points, you're competitive, you share badges, you have all these sort of social cues and rewards and comparative systems that it creates. It's honestly more of a game than most games, frankly. But kind of go back to your more central point, Paige. Domains, in addition to being non-fungible in the sense that once you own them, especially on Web3, you own them. Traditional ICANN domains, you buy that and you got to renew them, and if you don't, you lose it. And you don't want to be the person who bought twitch.tv and then let that drop, and then a couple of years later somebody picked it up, right? Like that's going to be a bummer. I bet you somebody owned openai.com at some point. You said, I don't have $20 for that this year. Well,
that's so sad to think about.
Yeah, it is sad.
You're gonna make me renew all of my domains without questioning it. Because what if?
Auto renew. With Web3, you don't have to do that, and it is so fun. And I'll speak. There's so many awesome domains, like on freename.io. You go on there. There's usually some sort of awesome welcome special. There's almost always some sort of coupon running with any given domain. When you buy a TLD, a top-level domain, you're able to control it. And so I own a number of these. I'm really excited to see what Freename is doing with .Gaming on that front, because you couldn't ask for, in my opinion, a better adjacency with non-fungibility expectations. Like I play, I earn, I keep, and I can trade, and I can establish and create an enhanced value by playing more with this. That is such an expectation in games. And so too is it an expectation in blockchain, in the Web3 world. So you've got games like Axie Infinity and these things where you level characters and you can trade them for cryptocurrency in real time. And you can wait and trade, just like you're trading Bitcoin, to use a coin that most people are probably familiar with. And it's so exciting to see, because I believe, and why I'm so pumped and excited to be working with the Davides and Matias and Eleanor and Kiaras of the world over at Freename, is I believe that they will be successful in creating the first centralized Web3 gaming identity with .Gaming, which certainly makes sense when you say .Gaming, right?
Yeah, and I think, like you say, the microtransactions with the atomic nature of the blockchain, meaning you don't have to wait to get a text message to confirm that your login was correct. You're dead, right?
Oh,
you needed that stored. You needed that stored right away, right, John, or something like that, or you needed that reward right away. So the opportunities could be.
Well, even just because with keeping your account on a blockchain, because personally, I talked to my dad about this last week. My Minecraft account was linked to my email, and then they migrated, and then I didn't get the email in time because I made the account when I was 13 and do not use that email anymore. So then I had to go confirm with that email. And then I go and I see that Yahoo had deleted that email account. And so I no longer have access to my Minecraft. And I put a lot of work into that.
And imagine if you spent years, right? What if you built entire universes?
I mean, there's a chance that I did. Like, there was a lot that went to waste on there that I would love that to be a decentralized thing where not one person, like, it's there, it's permanent.
You know, Julie, you touched on something that I think is so important, especially for people who are maybe over the age of 20 right now. I think we might have a really hard time understanding what it might mean to a true digital native, what we might use the term Gen Z, right? For people who grew up playing games, possibly even from the infancy, right? Like my 1-year-old daughter knows how to swipe, and we don't give her access to technology. She'll find the phone and she can open it up and she can be on the passcode trying to push numbers. And it scares me because I know how fast our brains wrap around this technology. So we have to be mindful about it. But for those who've grown up in that world and who've been, in many cases, playing games since their thumbs could move on a screen, they're not just thinking about games as a like thing that you picked up and you put down, you had some fun with it. Even for me, playing so much World of Warcraft or other MMORPGs, massive multiplayer online role-playing games, I've invested a lot of time there, and I would be very upset if my character got deleted. But it wouldn't be like the end of my world. However, let's say Minecraft, like you, Julie, if it's okay to use you as an example.
Absolutely.
Let's say Minecraft was how you built entire cities with your friends. And maybe it was even how you coped with like the loss of a loved one or something, right? And how you stayed connected with your friends. That is the modern day social connectivity for many people, especially maybe guys in our age range, Paige, right? Like you mentioned fantasy football as a way you stay close to your friends. Hey, here's the deal. Over 40, it is not easy to find new bros. You do not walk outside and like high five and all of a sudden you're best friends. It doesn't happen. In fact, it rarely ever happens.
Either, FYI.
Okay, got it. So the loneliness epidemic apparently is pervasive, right?
Well, that's what sorry.
Oh, please go ahead.
I was gonna say during COVID, that is what me and my friends did. Was I made a friends through a group chat, and we got on Jackbox and Minecraft, and that's what we did for hours and hours and hours. And actually, one of my best friends, I met her through that. And like it's even my webkins is also deleted. I had pets that I took care of for so long, and those got deleted. Like, and there's people put a lot of their heart into it, which would be heartbreaking.
We should put a trigger warning on here for you, Julie. I didn't know we were going to be dredging up some like real emotions here.
Pets. You guys are
your
making
pet. Yeah, this is.
I've got my little cat laying right next to me right now, and like she doesn't even know that she should have like 30 brothers and sisters.
She needs to be on the blockchain immediately.
She tried to run away on Monday. Can we put my cat on the blockchain? Can I mint her? Yes, this is my cat. Can prove.
To the Polygon wallet. Here you go.
I'm sure there's stuff out there doing that. You know what I mean? With all that type of stuff. Jon, as well as gaming, probably the other thing that you can speak to that's changed in 20 years is it did go from something you did for fun to something you could do for a living. And it was a pathway to be employed and to be creative and to put some of those skills to work in professions. And I mean, it's an industry with employs a lot of people, right?
Doesn't employ as many people as we'd hope sometimes. This is a sort of nod to some real, you mentioned turbulence or tumultuousness going on. I don't think that's a word. If it is, I'll take it.
We'll allow it.
I'm gonna buy tumultuousness if not. But there's been a lot of layoffs in games, and many thousands, between 20 and 30,000 people. In many cases, these layoffs are invisible. People have been affected by this, which accounts for between 8 and 10% of the United States gaming workforce.
Wow,
which is crazy. Wow. That's huge. That is a disproportionate hit to an industry that is akin to 2007 and 8 in the tech and real estate sectors, but it's not talked about as much unless you're in the circles, and then it's talked about a lot because these are people's lives. Largely, this is attributable to some really irresponsible leadership by gaming companies by taking big bets during COVID and saying this kind of growth is going to happen forever. Mm-hmm. We all knew that it wasn't. And there's some folks who, I wish that executives were more accountable for some of this than the people who were affected, but that's going to happen. It's how it works. But getting off my Marxist horse here for a second. What I will say is that as the gaming industry works right now, if you're a writer, you used to have to go into film and go to Hollywood, and you had to move across country, you had to get on a bus from Kansas, and you had to go to Hollywood, right? Classic story. If you wanted to make movies, you wanted to tell stories in any sort of medium, you basically had to go to film or write books or make TV, I suppose, right? Now, these interactive mediums of games, especially with really accessible engines like Fortnite and Unity, you could go on, and in the space of a month or two, especially with AI solutions out there now, let's say you, Paige, who I presume you don't play a lot of games, but you had an idea for a game and you said, you know what, I want to make a game that's about being a domain trader. You could make that game, and you could make a really awesome version of that game all by yourself in the space of about a month with free tools that are basically free so long as you have the hardware. And that's pretty cool. It's an unprecedented accessibility to creative expression that we've never seen before. So I'm excited. The whole reason I mentioned all this in the same sort of seemingly disconnected environment is this. Many, many thousands of amazing people have been displaced, which, by the way, definitely disproportionately affects female identifying people, people of color, and members of the queer community. And then over here, we have all this accessibility and ability to create in ways that hasn't happened before. And what does that mean? An explosion, a Cambrian explosion of new stuff that I can't wait to play. And so I believe we're entering into a new golden era of games over the course of these next 5 years because of that incredible crossroads. Add Web3 on top of that as a substrate to basically build on this. My money is staying in games. I'm just going to say that.
There you go.
I love that that's correct. Like that's because that makes so much sense, especially now, because that's my favorite thing about Web3 is that it really can be anyone who does it. Anyone can have a TLD. If I want to make a game and I want to make it its whole community and fan club, and I can buy that TLD, I can do that. So can 7 billion other people. Therefore, that innovation is just going to be so fast and so driven, which is amazing. And so I do want to ask you, what do you think is going to change the most in gaming now that Web3 exists? Like, what pros does Web3 open up for the world of gaming specifically?
Well, I think when you assign durable value to something, you inherently change the way people will interact with it. And so in an environment where, again, people who game, especially who game a lot, take World of Warcraft players, probably the MMORPG player who we probably can think of the most. You're going to play that much. You're probably going to try to always have what's called best in slot, which is like the best gear. Low drop rates. Oftentimes you're rolling against 20, 30 other people at a time. You have to be in an elite guild. So you're talking about thousands of hours of cumulative playtime to even be eligible to do this. And so it's an incredibly elite group. Easy for me to say. I'm talking about these gamers like we're Navy SEALs or something. No. It's an elite group of people who've made this life choice anyway. But there's a real expectation. If you invest that much and you don't get what you're looking for, or you get it and you were to lose it, you would be outraged. You would be so disgusted, you'd probably throw the platform down. And no matter what your slash played was, you'd say, sunk cost, I'm out. And that's happens sometimes. Characters get deleted, hacking happens, and you can restore someone's character most of the time. But there's plenty of stories of people whose, significant others delete their characters. There's a meme going around TikTok right now, a guy who built this huge following on his account, and then his significant other deletes his account. And he has this very emotional response, and people are laughing at him. And then people who understand are like, no, you don't understand. This was this guy's livelihood. He was making $1 million a year streaming, and now it's gone. And he spent years and years and years building this, and now it's gone. And it's not just a joke or a game, pun intended. When you add Web3 to this and it's non-fungible, your Yahoo account, it's not going to get deleted, and you're not going to say goodbye to your Neopet or whatever other animal or environment you've built. You control it. And your proof of work, your Bitcoin mining, is every step you take, every swing of your pickaxe in Minecraft. And when you're building things and you're selling them, you're realizing durable value that translates to actual money. So I believe, to put all that in one little tiny box, I believe the biggest thing that Web3 will impact is it will create a sustainable economy within games that hasn't been there before, that translates and applies across the industry, creating an entire new wave of players as the demographic base of gaming shifts. It's now 50-50, male identifying and female identifying, by the way, globally.
Wow.
So,
Oh, really? That's awesome.
Yep.
I didn't know.
And there's something to be said for being a little rebellious against the system, leaping at something new, even like you said, 50-50. Isn't there part of gaming or Julie, just part of being younger where you're going to leap at new? You know what I mean? I think there's a lot of tradition. You know, we just had a big golf tournament this weekend, the Masters Golf Tournament. And I love the Masters Golf Tournament. I love it. I mean, I love it for what it is. But at the same point, I had to kind of look at it and go, boy, they're really trying to hold on to what they had. You know what I mean? And I just don't know if some people that weren't told that they should have a certain experience from years gone by would have that, right, John? It's like if you're not re-earning your connection with younger people, they will kind of leap for something new because it feels like it's theirs, right?
It's a little boost of adrenaline for sure.
Yeah.
Boy, you talk about the thin line between obsolescence and nostalgia, right? Like you talk about nostalgia is so powerful. Look at every movie, like every 70-80% of movies now are all remakes. TV shows are all reboots, expansions upon, even just direct recreations of original intellectual properties. Disney, they're not like, hey, let's reinvent everything every year. They're like, let's live action yet another 5 movies this year and make.
And I watch them every single time.
Right? Hey, Bob Iger, if you're listening, and we know you are, good on you. Hey, guess what? Right? You're monetizing nostalgia. But boy, when you cross that over into obsolescence and you're seen as being like out of touch or now non-applicable anymore, i.e. obsolete, it's a real hard perception to reverse. And I think when you apply that to games, you know, let's look at how the world is changing, right? As it turns out, there's people that play video games outside of North America. A lot of people forget about that because we think about the North American player who has, you know, statistically the most available funds as your target customer. But here's an interesting piece of information. So the US Census Bureau estimates that about 1.2 million people per day gain access to the internet for the first time, almost all of them through low-cost mobile phones, largely Android phones that are between $20 and $50. Super sustainable, right? Even if you live in a very under-resourced developing nation, you can probably save up for a while and afford that. And that's revolutionary, right? The ability to have access to the internet and all the knowledge therein changes your entire world. 70% of people, the first thing that they do when they get that phone is they download a game. And so that's about 840,000 new players every single day playing something new, largely playing something that isn't crazy, right? They're not downloading some, 2 gig game that is super 3D rendered. They're probably playing a puzzle game or a word game. And that's why those industries are just exploding over and over again. And that's why I would never bet against any companies that are thinking about emerging demographics, or especially in those countries where you see an equal mix. Everyone's playing. It's not just nerdy guys who might look and sound a lot like me in our mom's basements hold up anymore. It's everybody playing in every part of the world. And that's why Web3, a .gaming-esque presence, is going to, I truly believe, create that consistency point. When it's not just about I play, it's about I play and that's how I earn and that's how I work and maybe even how I feed my family. That's going to be a totally different universe. And I think .gaming will be the foundation it's built on.
Yeah, and I think, a lot of the stuff I'm doing with Freename now is talking about TLD owners building community. Exclusive content is probably the way to do that. We follow the Netflix model. Even I go back to the AOL model. AOL had a thing called the Motley Fool, that if you were an investor, you could do this game every day. This is still one of the most brilliant marketing things I've ever seen. And they would say, IBM's reporting earnings tomorrow. They think it's going to be $2.10. What's your guess? And and that made me join AOL to put in my guess. Then I had to go back the next day to see where I ranked. And isn't that important, John? Who am I compared to my peers? Where do I stand, right? And then they did it a whole month, and then you had your cumulative points. But that got me to go through the pain points of downloading AOL or this, that, and the other. And I think the same thing can be true with your Freename TLD if you're a Freename TLD owner. Creating something on one of your URLs, which is really just a map. It's a map to send you to content that could exist on the regular internet. But you don't have to deal with all the junk the regular internet has, all these bots and all these search engines and all these things. Just you know what I mean? You just have this pathway, and people feel like it's what do they call, Julie, those things in games where, like, you know, it's a hidden thing in a game and you find something and it's like a hidden world?
I don't know, but I know how to find them in Mario.
John knows.
Easter egg.
Easter egg. There you go. And you make the experience. So then the fact that you have to download a plugin, the Nodo system or whatever, to see the Web3 domains, you're willing to do that because in Web 2, you build an expectation. Wouldn't you like to do this? You simulate what it would be like to be on this. So someone goes, I want to be on that, right? And then they take the next step. So I think I see we have some of the team here from Kevin Kopis from Short Dot. They did a thing to give out a discount one time where it was just a slot machine or a Ferris wheel. And you could just sit there and hit the Ferris wheel to see what your coupon was. And that's really basic, but people do it, I think, is what you're saying. I mean, they'll do it over and over again. I was going to do an NFT project called Anteaters, and I was all ready right when the NFTs crashed because I owned anteaters.com. So I wanted to pair that up. And a big part of it was going to be resurrecting this game from the 90s called Anteaters, where you go in the little hole with your tongue and you suck up all these ants, and the ants were going to be coins, and you earn your coins, right? And that created an experience, you know, to be able to do it. So I love the fact that you said that the tools to bring game creation closer are coming. And speaking of NFTs, I feel like NFTs and money making at the same time Meta was trying to own the metaverse, it kind of sidetracked the idea of virtual worlds and metaverse. But I'm starting to see that come back, all that it could be, whether it's the goggles or the virtual worlds or what we called the metaverse. Do you see that happening, John, a little bit? That now we got NFTs out of the way and that you're at home during the pandemic and you want to make money. It's kind of like that virtual world has been able to grow.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that I would even possibly double down on that statement, because let's acknowledge it. Like I whenever I talk about Web3, I usually get somebody that's either going to say, I got you, I'm going to talk about NFTs, here's why that's invalid. Or they're going to say, but what about NFTs, in a sort of commiserating, you've made a bad choice with your life kind of a way. And let's acknowledge it. That NFT phase where people were paying $1 million for a chimp picture, that was a rough period. That was an adolescence of Web3 or blockchain in general. And that was simply a crystallization of fascination. That was just a world that got really interested in something, had access to all this tech during 2020, 21. And really was just sort of figuring out how to play with it. There were a few people that capitalized that and I think overly benefited from it, and then kind of carpet bagged and left town with their millions of dollars. People are holding their, 50 by 50 pixel images. And that's too bad. And I think that left such a bad taste in so many people's mouths that it's both a very, very bad thing and a really good thing for some. Because just because one bad thing happened doesn't mean that an entire sector of technology is now nuclear fallout. Hashtag Fallout. There's a video game TV show that's like the #1 TV show in the world. It's also a video game, by the way.
That's really good. That's on my game plan.
Super good. Yeah. Amazon sponsored these guys on the show because we're talking about your show right now. So sponsor Monday Night Domains. But the interesting thing about that is those that realize that one bad apple did not mean that the tree is garbage are now standing there with that tree looking up and saying, there is so much here. There is so much opportunity here on this tree. And yes, let's acknowledge that the NFT thing was not great. And let's make sure NFT is not a 4-letter word going forward, right? Because an NFT is not just a silly small picture that somebody pays $1 million for and then loses that money. It applies to so much else. Long story short, those that can see past that one bad example can see a world of opportunity that is far more expansive than that one bad example were to paint a picture of.
So we've got a few questions in the comments that More Than SEO has asked pretty early on. I haven't put them up because we were chit-chatting. Do you have time to answer some questions?
Let's rock and roll.
All righty. Question number 1. It should pop up on the screen there. On the crypto exchanges, there are almost 400 coins/tokens. in the gaming category sector, how would you use Web3 SLDs and TLDs intelligently to meet the needs of gamers and coin token investors?
Wow, that's a big question. I think there's a lot of people that are on. Oh, I'm sorry, what's that?
I think he's got more than SEO comes and watches every week, and he always asks such great questions.
Way to go, More Than SEO. I hope that you're a real person and not just a really excellent GPT-4 mod. This is the question, right? Like this is for people in Web3 games tantamount to saying, how do we, for an economist saying, how do we deal with inflation? There's a lot of ways that you can answer this question, and not all of them are perfect. In fact, I don't think any of them are. I do think that, and this is my unbiased perspective largely, but I do think that something centralizing, a midpoint of centralization, like a .gaming as a platform, as opposed to just as a simple TLD that people can buy SLDs under, I do think that having some consolidation of, to your point, there's so many coins, and there's even so many blockchains right now where you do have such industry fragmentation that it is very hard to say, I can trade with anybody that I meet. And I think Paige had touched on that earlier, where when we have fungibility between, not fungibility, when we have interplay between the different chains, I think that will solve for a lot of this right here. But there are too many. There are too many ICOs around games, and everybody's trying to create their own thing, hoping that they create that ecosystem. Somebody will. They probably already have, frankly. And it's happening now. It might be Avalanche. I believe they're the furthest ahead right now, still statistically with DAU and other stats. But someone's going to create that, and when they do, that will become an incredible. That I believe will be the NVIDIA story 3 years from now, and it will come out of the left field just like NVIDIA did, where very few people saw the GPU scarcity and gold rush coming. Those that did went hard in the paint on NVIDIA, benefited massively, because they knew what AI meant. They understood what that meant. And those that understand what Web3 means for games, for this massively growing industry, a 13.4% CAGR, by the way, y'all. You don't see a lot of industries with that. And that's a pessimistic estimation. That for me is super exciting. It's a great question.
And I'll just throw in the functionality of these coins and tokens, like Jon mentioned, gets hurt by the fact that the early investors want to have it be a fake cornered thing to go up. But if we ever got a stable coin that can be used across games, you know what I mean? Where you weren't doing it to profit from the change in value of the token, you just wanted the utility. You know what I mean? As a exchange, thing, then I think all of a sudden you wouldn't have to make two decisions, right, Jon? You just have to say, I want it for its price, not, and which coin do I want to use or something like that. So good question.
Now that'd be something to create a coin that could be used across across multiple games. Like, so if I am really good at Fortnite and I have 1 million Fortnite coins, I don't know what to use, and then I stop playing Fortnite, I'm like, well, I have all this time invested. If I could blockchain that over to a different game, that'd be, someone get on that. I feel like that's a great idea.
Yeah, I mean, it's like the classic arcade token. You go to Chuck E. Cheese and you get home with a pocket full of tokens.
Yeah.
Better go back to Chuck E. Cheese. And if you move away, guess what?
I still got them, Julie.
Huh?
I still have them.
Pure lead.
That does not surprise me in the slightest. All right, next question. Some of the Earth-based metaverses are trying to gamify real-world locations with 3D buildings and avatars blended with Google Earth. Any ideas on how to integrate Web3 domains for local businesses?
Yeah, I think one of the first, what I'm noticing is that as I travel around, and one of my favorite things to do at my speaking engagements is build GPTs with people as a way to dispel, to educate, and to empower people to just play. Because the first time somebody sees how easy it is to build a GPT and GPT-4, you just watch their minds hit a different evolutionary pathway. Like an entirely new universe opens up that they didn't even know was just sitting there waiting for them for $20 a month. So I would say that when you build a GPT now, unprompted, if you keep pushing it just towards like, how do I make sure that my technological footprint is good, without saying Web3, without saying blockchain, any of this stuff, it is now starting to prompt you. I'm noticing this more and more and more and faster now. it's prompting you to consider making sure that you own your domains in both ICANN Web 2 and in Web 3. And I think that that's a real testament to the fact that your identity, you better get it. Like you better own your identity, because it's up for grabs right now. And whether that's your identity for your business, for your family, for your last name, whatever that looks like, you need to own that or you're going to rent it. And so I think that this question for me, some of the Earth-based metaverses are trying to gamify real-world locations. This is a statistic that really threw me off. When I was at GTC, which was NVIDIA's huge conference a few weeks ago, the number one thing that those vendors were there presenting and demonstrating was digital twinning. This incredible explosion in technology that lets somebody basically walk around with a small module or put it on a robot dog and walk through an area, and to have a near perfect, down to the micrometer replica of that environment. They're not only selling that as tokens, but they're also able to put that into games and rent that to people. And also really great real world simulation, like military training, first responder training, all this construction, all this really important stuff. But that stuff is definitely getting tokenized quickly.
That is absolutely wild. That is insane. What a great. I love innovation. Okay.
Yeah, I think so. And I think the only idea I had on that question was, loyalty programs are really big. And I think about how, again, to get a software that's like a SaaS service loyalty program, you're going to pay a certain amount per month. Maybe Web3 allows you to have your own loyalty program or something like that around businesses. So that'd be my thought on the local business.
Cool.
Hey, you mentioned GPT, and as we wind down a little bit, you just spoke recently at the AI conference. I feel like I'm forced to either just disregard AI, you know what I mean, because I missed it, or understand it and it's so overwhelming, you know what I mean? So I'll ask you one, a little personal on the couch, question about that. And then two, it would be hard to bring it down to AI and gaming in a short amount of time, but just give us one exciting example of AI and gaming, because I know you had a presentation here recently.
Oh boy. I having been asked and answering this question so many times, I need to have a faster answer here. But the reason why this answer is so hard for me to nail down immediately, Paige, is actually the same thing that I believe is the best response to your initial statement around la 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 la. So much has happened with AI. It's too far along. La la la. I don't even want to know how far behind I am. Which we all know what that's like. I remember being 20 years old. I didn't want to look at my checking account because I knew it was probably overdrawn. I didn't want that. Like, I don't even want to know. I don't want to look. Don't tell me. It's not going to change anything. I don't want to know. Well, here's the thing. AI right now is changing so fast that somebody who's a subject matter expert at 9 o'clock in the morning is obsolete by 6 p.m. that day. And so it's true for everybody. It doesn't matter what you know right now. It matters what you're learning. And anybody can start learning immediately. And so I encourage everybody to just start playing with it. Play with AI, because you will inherently find a way to use it for what interests you. And since it can do anything, that's going to be your best way to learn. And that's why I am almost a borderline evangelist, borderline actually acolyte, if you will, zealot, for saying, go and play. Build GPTs, go mess around, push it, do whatever you want. Make it do Trump impressions, make it predict the futures of Bitcoin, make it build a GPT that gives you good ideas and looks up available Web3 domains, because it can. Now that comes back around to games. Now, I believe that the most exciting thing that's happening in games with AI right now. So let's acknowledge the fact that not everybody who really plays games a lot is going to necessarily be super socially prevalent, well adjusted, right? Like for me in high school, I came from a very poor life in a very small mountain town in Northern California. And so I relied upon games as a source of happiness. And the few friends that I had, that's really all that we did. So I was not in good shape. I was very unhealthy, very socially crippled. Games both helped me out of it and got me into that world. Now, I mention that because I do see an environment coming along, for better or worse, that is essentially the movie Her. Did both of you happen to see that movie with Joaquin Phoenix and the voice of Scarlett Johansson? Long story short, Joaquin Phoenix, this movie is set in like, it could be now, it could be 2040 or some very near term future. essentially, this guy's a software engineer in a major metro in the United States. He's very lonely. He's had a really hard time with meeting people. He has just been broken up with because his social cues, he's really struggling for a lot of reasons. It doesn't say that he has any sort of diagnosis, that he's perhaps part of the ASD community or whatever. But this thing comes out, and it's an AI-powered phone that gets to know you and does kind of like helps you with your whole life. And he falls in love with it. And then all kinds of other things happen. But it's not a comedy. It is a drama, and it is a very prescient one where now you're seeing AIs come along. Here's an interesting thing. If you go on Etsy right now, you can actually pay $20 to have somebody give you a month of access to texting with your favorite video game character. And these things are selling like crazy. Thousands and thousands of people a month are paying this $20 to talk with Asterion from Baldur's Gate 3, to talk with Steve from Minecraft. And these are just personalities that somebody built into a GPT or otherwise use Zapier to create a workflow. And this is a long way of saying the loneliness that people are experiencing more and more and more in a world where the birth rate is trending in the wrong direction. So this is not necessarily a good thing, I'm saying. An answer to that is finding connectivity with digital identities, digital personalities that understand us and can predict our needs better than any human ever could. And so you add that to a game, and you have an environment that people may never want to leave, for better or worse.
Wow.
Interesting. Yeah.
That makes me think, what if your her could communicate with other hers to help you build socialism to real life connections where you've got a chance to wouldn't that be great, John, if they would encourage real life by telling you, listen, our hers have been talking to each other, you know what I mean? And they think it would be good, not for dating even, just for platonic, that, you know, wouldn't that be something?
Because if I fall in love with my AI, then he should find the AI that he can fall in love with, and the owner of that one that he fell in love with should be my soulmate.
There you go. This is a new sort of like, we could call it poly AI Marie. I think Paige already bought that Web3 domain. Like while we were saying.
No, but I have heard one tonight. See, like digital twins, I probably have 30 digital twin names. And the worst thing for a domainer is I get in so early that then I think the trend's over, and then the trend really happens. You know what I mean? And so I'm always on the lookout for, like I used to have a lot of MMO, PRG, and then I would misspell it and I would get the wrong name. But I will tell people that, you know, I mentioned when we came on the call tonight, I was doing a little domain gaming, because the only part of domaining, I guess, that would be like gaming is the hunt, is the treasure hunt. You know what I mean? Where you know what you want, you're searching for it. Now, don't go overboard, but when you find it, you feel that dopamine rush, that win. I wish we had it on the selling side, where once you own all these domains, you can sit there and do a game to sell them. And that's what you've got me thinking about, John, is to be able to then say, I hate outbounding and trying to sell people my names, but if I could look at it as a game that I sat down at my console and I just did step 1, step 2, step 3, and all of a sudden the register rang, that would be crazy.
That wouldn't hurt.
Wow. I think a game can make anything better. I have never been to the New York Times website before Wordle came out, and now I go there every single day. So I think that is it's gonna work.
Power of the game. The power of the game.
All right, John. Anything else you want to leave us with? Last words?
2 things. One, I work with a nonprofit. I volunteer with this group called Games for Love. We put video games in children's hospitals, and then we help teach doctors how to meaningfully integrate those games into the care protocols for kids. We're always looking for volunteers, gamesforlove.org. We're also doing a big drive with actually a business that my partner and I own, which is called nerdgear.io. It's all just a bunch of nerdy t-shirts and Dungeons and Dragons dice. Exactly what you'd think somebody who said the things I said on this call would probably be into. All those really nerdy designs that we just kind of come up with and put on there for fun. We're donating 100% of our proceeds in the month of May to Games for Love. So anybody who would like to go to there, anything that you buy directly puts Nintendo Switches into the hands of kids in cancer wards and burn units in really tough spots all around the world to the tune of millions a year. So if you want to come and volunteer, see you at gamesforlove.org. If you want to buy something that directly drives that or donate directly on the website on gamesforlove.org, please do. Or nerdgear.io in the month of May, all of those profits go directly to them.
Awesome.
Love it. All right,
Awesome.
Julie.
It's been a pleasure. All right,
It's
guys,
been fun. Thank you guys so much for having me on here. This has been a blast.